Dr. Vincent Ahosi. He is the Chief Executive of Movie Consulting Limited. And we couldn't conclude that conversation last week, but we should be able to do that today. And just looking at some of those recommendations by IMF, strengthening governance and oversight. And Nigeria has been asked to conduct thorough governance diagnostics and strengthen oversight functions to monitor budgetary allocations and project performance effectively. Another recommendation is to enhance transparency, which could include publishing quarterly financial reports detailing revenues, expenditures, and procurement processes to rebuild trust, improve AML, CFT frameworks, strengthening anti-money laundering and combating financing of terrorism, focus on specific compliance gaps, protect whistleblowers in the country, increase public engagement, and strengthening institutions. This is, of course, the one that has. They've always talked about how individuals seem to be bigger and stronger than institutions in the country, which is why it does look like a group of people are able to do whatever they like against the law and not get punished. So it's one of the recommendations of IMF to strengthen institutions and make them stronger than individuals. Dr. Ahosi, good morning and thank you so much for joining us again today. What are your thoughts on these recommendations? Have we started any of them?
Thank you so much, Ms. Ini. We already had the conversation last week that there are 40 recommendations involved, and Nigeria has complied for that Nigeria has not been able to, comply with fully, and that is what is keeping Nigeria as a nation in the grey list of the FATF. Sorry. Now, and I said in that conversation that is making it difficult for the Nigerian state to be able to comply. The first is recommendation R12, which has to do with politically exposed persons, either locally or externally, in terms of local politically or foreign politically exposed persons. The second one is R15, which has got to do with new technologies. We have R22, which has to do with customer due diligence in terms of designated non-financial businesses, which has to do with other measures concerning, again, designated non-financial businesses and professions. So now let's quickly go into it so that we can know why it's difficult for Nigeria to comply with this. For Nigeria to exit the FATF grey list, we have to work with FATF to address these strategic deficiencies. We have to implement action plans, and we have to demonstrate, we must demonstrate success. So now let's look at the first one that I talked about, R12, politically exposed persons. And this has subsections. First is that the financial institutions are required, whether in addition to doing their normal CDD, what we call CDD is the normal customer due diligence. In addition to this, you have to have appropriate risk management, one, to determine whether that customer or beneficial owner of that, and if you do find out that they are, you have to obtain a senior management approval for establishing that business relationship with them, or if they have had one before, or continue that relationship. So a senior management. Number three, you have to take measures to establish their source of wealth and the source of those funds involved. And number four, you have to conduct an ongoing and enhanced monitoring. As if that is not weighty enough considering the Nigerian context, is the requirement that for all politically exposed persons, you have to do the same for their family members as well as their close associates. Simply put, if you want to open an account, governor's wife or a personal assistant to a governor, one, the bank has to find out what your source of wealth is. Two, they have to determine your source of funds. And in Nigeria, without saying much, we all know what that means. Because it's almost, politically, or rather, operationally difficult in the Nigeria context for a young banker to ask a politician, how do you make your money? Or so that is one of the reasons. The second one has got to do with new technologies, which is R15. And R15 simply says that countries and financial institutions are required, one, to identify and assess money laundering and terrorism, got to do with development of new products, development of new practices, and development of new delivery mechanisms. Now, this one may sound not so difficult because you say, okay, the banks are always, upgrading their systems and all. It goes far beyond that. Number two, it says the use of new and developing technologies for both new and pre-existing products. You just have to be able to make sure that they should not facilitate money laundering, terrorist financing, and you have to do this risk assessment before you introduce the new products. This is more important when you now go to issues around what we call virtual assets. Virtual assets, you have the digital assets, you have the normal, routine assets. These are things that when we now put it side by side, new development of technologies, it is a big one. What is a virtual asset, for example? It's a digital representation of value. It can be digitally traded. It can be transferred. It can be used for payment, and it can be used for investment purposes. Now, the most common one is the crypto called, the cryptography. They are primarily depend on cryptography, and they use what we call DLT, the distributed ledger technology, and that's why we call them cryptocurrency. Presented through the use of, again, DLT, distributed ledger technology. Now, when we hear DLT, the fear or rather the key thing about DLT is this.
I think we're really trying to be patient there with Dr. Amosi, but the network is not really stable. So, but I know that Dr. Amosi has shared some of those areas which he believes, especially talking about the politically exposed individuals and their family members, not just them, dealing with that and building that institution as IMF has recommended stronger than individuals. That would be one major way to go. Thank you so much, Dr. Amosi. Unfortunately, we're not able to conclude the conversation because of the internet. It's just going on and off. I know that by God's grace, one of these days will be done. We'll be able to get to the end of your thoughts. And of course, you do have a whole lot to share, saying that you've worked closely with Oxfam even before now. Dr. Vincent Ahos is the Chief Executive, Movie Consulting Limited. And we're just able to glean a bit of the knowledge that he has for us, and hopefully we'll be able to get him back to do, more of it.